Then one day, as he pushed open his front door, the familiar stairwell transformed into an endless corridor. At either end of the corridor stood 12 identical iron doors. And so the story began. Ruan Nance, who told Ling Qiush, when you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you. Chapter 1. First step through the door. It was a small mound village, hidden by layers upon layers of lush trees. Only one path led to the village. Fresh rain had left it muddy and treacherous, with deep-set eyes and broad brows that made her strikingly beautiful. Standing taller than Ling Qiush himself, she wore an ill-fitting long dress. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she softly sobbed, murmuring, "I was on my hallway." The girl asked, "Hallway?" Ling Qiush glanced up at the gloomy sky. "Did you open a door?" The girl seemed to recall something, her expression shifting slightly. She said, rustling the leaves on the treetops and deepening the surrounding stillness. Suddenly, light snow began to fall from the sky, as if urging them to hurry. They had to reach the village ahead. Nestled among the clusters of trees, Ling Qiush froze for 3 seconds before offering a reluctant compliment. "It's a beautiful name." Ruan Beiji glared at him with her watery eyes and declared, "Men are all liars." Ling Qiush, huh? Girl wasn't as delicate as he'd imagined. As they walked toward the village, they exchanged information, learning they'd both suddenly appeared in this wilderness after opening a door. Ruan Beiji had opened the door in her bathroom. Ling Qiush had opened but I didn't think much of it and just pulled it open. The very next second after pulling it open, they found themselves in this desolate wilderness. Ling Qiush said, "I opened a black iron door too." Just as he spoke, a shadowy figure appeared on the path ahead, tall and broad. It was clearly an adult male. "Hey, big guy up ahead," Ling Qiush called out from a distance. The man's footsteps halted, seemingly responding to Ling Qiush's voice. Ling Qiush hurried forward, slapping the man's shoulder. "Hello, do you know where this place is?" The man turned, revealing a face thickly covered in beard, combined with his tall, sturdy frame. He looked almost like a bear at first glance. "You new here?" Ling Qiush replied. "What do you mean, new? The man said nothing. He looked at him, then glanced at Ruan Beiji, who stood behind him looking frightened. "Come on, I'll explain everything once we get to the village." Ling Qiush nodded in agreement, and the three of them set off toward the village together. The seas here seemed to be winter. Darkness fell unusually early. Just moments ago, the setting sun had still hung in the sky, but now only thick. Ling Qiush surveyed their surroundings. Beyond the village, no other light sources existed. Endless forests stretched as far as the eye could see, devoid of paths or human presence. Ling Qiush pulled a cigarette from his pocket and offered it to the man, who waved it away. "Brother, where exactly are we?" Ling Qiush asked. The man replied. The man truly lived up to his name. He was about to ask more when Zhang Qi made a shushing gesture. "Don't ask. You'll understand once we reach the village." "Oh?" Ling Qiush replied. "All right." The woman slowly turned her head. In the moonlight, Ling Qiushi saw her face. It was a face hard to describe. Pale, sullen, her eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. Her appearance was unfamiliar, but her voice was utterly familiar. She said, "Aren't you afraid of me?" Ling Qiushi was silent for 3 seconds, then glanced down at his quilt. "Come on. I only brought 1 pair of pants with me." "Woman." Ling Qiushi wiped his face. "If you get scared again, I'll pee." He reached out and began patting Ruan Beiji, who was beside him, saying, "Get up." Ruan Beiji, dazed, was woken by Ling Qiuxi's pat. She rubbed her eyes and asked, "What are you doing?" She opened her eyes and saw the woman sitting at the head of the bed. "Who is this?" "Ling Qiuxi. Where did you find a woman in the middle of the night? You're so shameless. How am I any worse than her?" "Ling Qiuxi. Is this the point?" Ruan Beiji cursed softly for a few moments before suddenly sensing something was amiss. Her beautiful black eyes widened. Why is her neck getting longer and longer? Ling Qiuxi looked again and saw that the woman had stood up from the headboard. Her head tilted to one side, and her neck grew ever longer, resembling a mutated snake. The sight stunned both of them. Finally, Ling Qiuxi couldn't stand it anymore and shouted, "Fuck you! Run!" He grabbed Ruan Beiji's hand and bolted for the door. Ruan Beiji, so frail during the day, outrun Ling Qiuxi and vanished like a gust of wind. Ling Qiuxi, "Fuck you!" and only breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that the thing hadn't followed them. Ruan Beiji cried harder than anyone else and ran faster than a dog. By the time Ling Qiuxi was panting, her eyes were already filled with tears, ready for another round. "Stop crying. Stop crying," Ling Qiuxi said. "What if you keep your voice down and attract that thing?" "Ruan Beiji, you're only thinking about others, not me." Perhaps because Ling Qiuxi's expression was too disgusting, Ruan Beiji managed to hold back her tears. She sat down weakly on a stool on the first floor, gently wiping her moist eyes. They were standing in the living room on the first floor. The whole place was completely empty. Despite the commotion, no one had come out to see what was happening. Apart from their breathing, there was no other sound. Ling Qiuxi stood there for a moment, hesitating. What should we do? He and Ruan Beiji had no experience with these matters and had no idea how to handle them. They stood there like two wooden stakes. "It's snowing outside," Ruan Beiji suddenly said, slowly walking to the door and looking into the courtyard. It started snowing in the middle of the night. Ling Qiuxi stood at the doorway, noticing a thin layer of snow already piling up in the courtyard. He also saw the well the female ghost had mentioned. Indeed, as she had said, there was a well in the middle of the courtyard. The well's location was somewhat awkward, situating it in the very center of the courtyard, even blocking the main door. This wasn't considered auspicious from a feng shui perspective. A stone entrance. A mouth unspeakable. Ruan Beiji suddenly said, "This well is brilliantly built." She smiled, her eyes curling up in a beautiful way. "What?" Ling Qiuxi asked. "You also know feng shui?" Ruan Beiji said, "My family does it. I've learned a little." She glanced at Ling Qiuxi. "What do you do?" Ling Qiuxi. "Design." Ruan Beiji. "Oh, you're not bald. You've only been doing it for a few years, haven't you?" Ling Qiuxi. "You really know how to talk. Guess what I do?" Ruan Beiji ruffled her hair. Ling Qiuxi. "Model." He rarely saw a girl as tall as Ruan Beiji, with a tall figure and a good temperament. Aside from her small breasts, she seemed to have no other flaws. "No," Ruan Beiji said with a smile. "I'm a fortune teller." Ling Qiuxi was stunned. "Let me calculate." Ruan Beiji's fingers calculated quickly. "The moon is so round today. I think someone's going to die." Ling Qiuxi was at a loss for words. What kind of logic is this? How can a full moon mean someone's going to die? Ruan Beiji ignored Ling Qiuxi and walked toward the courtyard, waving at him. Ling Qiuxi was startled by her gesture. "Where are you going?" "It's so late," Ruan Beiji said. "I want to check the well." "Let's check it tomorrow during the day. It's too dangerous now." Despite this, Ling Qiuxi was still worried about Ruan Beiji and followed her into the courtyard. Ruan Beiji, dressed in a long white dress, moved lightly in the snow like an elf. She slowly approached the wellhead, but didn't move closer. Instead, she waited for Ling Qiushi to join her. Ling Qiushi asked, "What's wrong?" Ruan Beiji said, "Nothing. I just suddenly don't feel like watching anymore. Let's go back." Ling Qiushi was puzzled. "Why do we have to go back? It's too cold." Ruan Beiji said, "I'm freezing." She then naturally grasped Ling Qiushi's arm and forcibly pulled him back into the house. Ling Qiushi, pulled by Ruan Beiji, realized her immense strength, and for a moment, he couldn't break free. Ruan Beiji. Ling Qiushi was startled by her strength. Ruan Beiji finally let go. "Let's go. It's so cold. Let's go back quickly. We can still sleep a little longer," she said, ignoring Ling Qiushi and heading upstairs to her room. Ling Qiushi had no choice but to follow her back to her room on the second floor. Fortunately, the terrifying woman from before was gone, but the window was open, letting a chilly wind blast into the room. Ruan Beiji climbed into bed, closed her eyes, and was about to fall asleep. Ling Qiushi couldn't sleep, so he relit the kerosene lamp and endured the entire night. The nights here were long and terrifying. Outside, the wind howled and the snow howled, while inside, a beautiful woman slept soundly. Ruan Beiji shared a bed with a man she had just met, yet she showed no signs of vigilance. Her breathing was even, and a faint blush etched on her fair cheeks, making her look particularly alluring. Ling Qiushi glanced at her and then averted his gaze. He wasn't a gentleman who could remain calm in the face of temptation, nor was he the kind of villain who would take advantage of someone's misfortune. The next day, the shadow of the rising sun appeared on the edge of the sky around 8 o'clock. After a night of snow, it was already completely white outside. Ruan Beiji whimpered as she opened her eyes, stretched out an arm, then instantly retracted it. "It's so cold." Ling Qiushi, seeing her expression, thought to himself, "That's not what you said last night, Qiushi." Ruan Beiji said, "Go find me 2 pieces of clothing. I'm only wearing a skirt. It's too cold." Ling Qiushi agreed. He actually planned to find 2 pieces of clothing to wear warmer, since it was still a scorching summer in his own world. Chapter 2: Indoor Enki. After dawn, the terrifying atmosphere of last night dissipated considerably. Ling Qiushi was about to descend the second-floor corridor when he heard a rustling noise coming from the third floor, as if many people were discussing something. He hadn't intended to investigate, but then he heard a woman's wailing, a wail filled with grief, as if she had suffered something utterly tragic. After a moment's hesitation, Ling Qiushi turned and headed for the third-floor staircase to see what was happening upstairs. The building was made of wood, and the planks of the stairs were aging. They creaked underfoot, and in some places they trembled, as if they couldn't bear the weight of a person. Ling Qiushi reached the third floor and saw several people standing in the corridor. But what caught his attention was the thick smell of blood in the air. The odor was so strong that it stung his nose, and Ling Qiushi felt a sense of unease. He moved cautiously, moving behind the people. "I knew it," said Zhang Qi, the tall man who had picked up Ling Qiushi and the others yesterday, in a low voice, discussing something. "Something really happened yesterday." Zhao Kei was also speaking. She said, "I think so too. I thought it was." At this point, she turned and glanced at Ling Qiushi, who had walked up behind her. "Forget it." Ling Qiushi wondered what he meant by that. "I thought it was someone. Me and Ruan Beiji." He raised his eyes and saw a door behind Zhao Kei. The door was ajar. Blood splattered across the floor. Due to the cold, the blood had already solidified, but the sheer volume of blood was still noticeable. "What happened?" Ling Qiushi asked. Someone's dead, Zhang Qi said flatly. Ling Qiushi. Dead. If it were yesterday, he would probably have found it incredible how these people could say such things in such a calm tone. But after what happened last night, he had clearly realized that the place he was in was no longer a world that could be explained by common sense. Me? Zhang Qi said. Ling Qiushi shifted his perspective and glanced inside the door. This sight made him gasp. The room was covered in congealed blood. 2 bodies lay haphazardly on the floor, their flesh so mangled that they were completely unrecognizable. They looked more like skinless lumps of flesh than human. Blood flowed all over the floor, from the floor to the walls. There was hardly a clean spot on the entire 3rd floor. Though Ling Qiushi had prepared himself mentally, he was still disgusted by the scene. He covered his mouth and turned around. Xiao Kei, understandingly, said, "There's a toilet in the next room." Ling Qiushi quickly rushed to the toilet and vomited. After waiting for him to finish vomiting, Xiao Kei said, "I thought you wouldn't." Ling Qiushi. Huh? Xiao Kei said calmly. You and Ruan Beiji are already very well qualified new recruits. Generally, new recruits are in very poor condition after their first door. Their survival rate is about 20%. Xiao Kei said. Let's go downstairs for breakfast. Ling Qiushi said. Then don't worry about those 2 bodies. Zhao Xi's expression was very strange. What do you want to do? Ling Qiushi was speechless. He was following the group downstairs when he suddenly remembered something and asked doubtfully, "Wait, when I was on the 2nd floor, I heard a woman crying on the 3rd floor." He looked around and confirmed that Zhao Kei was the only girl among them. She looked calm and didn't seem like someone who would burst into tears. A woman crying, Xiao Kei said. We didn't hear it. You must have misheard. Ling Qiushi. Okay. Breakfast was already prepared on the 1st floor, steaming hot on the table. The cooks were said to be local villagers, and they looked no different from ordinary people. After Ling Qiushi finished breakfast, he borrowed a few thick clothes from them and inquired about village affairs. There's nothing going on in our village. The villagers seemed unable to offer any useful information. Only a few tourists come every winter. Ling Qiushi. Oh? How do you usually get your groceries? The villagers said. We go outside the mountains. Although the roads are difficult to navigate, we always find a way. But once it snows, we can't get out. The roads are blocked, and we're stuck here all winter. Ling Qiushi thought for a moment, then suddenly asked, Are all the wells in your village dug in the center of the courtyard? I don't know if it was Ling Qiushi's imagination, but when he mentioned the word, well, the villagers' expression seemed to grow tense. But they didn't offer any specific information. They simply nodded, said, yes, and turned and walked away. Ling Qiushi pondered for a moment, but couldn't come up with a clear idea. He decided to give the clothes to Ruan Beiji first and then discuss other matters. When he entered the room, Ruan Beiji was lying on the bed playing with her phone. Seeing him come in, she hummed softly. You're so slow. Ling Qiushi handed the borrowed clothes to the bed and said, Get up. There's breakfast on the 1st floor. Ruan Beiji nodded. Ling Qiushi said, I'll wait for you outside. Wait. Ruan Beiji suddenly called out. What's that on your head? What? Ling Qiushi was puzzled. Ruan Beiji waved at him, and Ling Qiushi approached her. It's all red. Ruan Beiji reached out and touched Ling Qiushi's head, then turned her palm over. What is this? Ling Qiushi had a bad feeling the moment he saw what Ruan Beiji was holding, because it looked very much like frozen blood. I'll go check it out. Ling Qiushi hurried into the bathroom. As Ruan Beiji had predicted, he noticed tiny bits of ice all over his hair. These were a dark red, so hidden within his hair that they were completely invisible. He had no idea when they'd got in there. Fuck you. Ling Qiushi cursed softly and wiped his head with a towel. It would have been fine if he hadn't wiped it. But the more he wiped, the more shocking it became. The hot towel had practically stained it red, and he hadn't even wiped his hair clean. Ruan Beiji, having changed into thicker clothes, came over and said rudely, "It's a good thing this isn't green." Ling Qiushi, have you ever seen green blood? Ruan Beiji, is this blood? Ling Qiushi sighed and briefly recounted what happened on the third floor. When he mentioned the deaths, Ruan Beiji began to sob softly again, saying, "Brother Lin, I'm so scared. Will we be the next to die?" She was a beautiful girl, and it was heartbreaking to see her crying so bitterly. Ling Qiushi stepped forward to comfort her. Just as Ruan Beiji was about to rest her head on his shoulder, she suddenly said, "Brother Lin, how tall are you?" Ling Qiushi, 1.8 meters. Oh, Ruan Beiji said, "Shorter than me?" Ling Qiushi, I'm sorry. Ling Qiushi turned around and cleaned his hair, wondering where all the blood had come from. Finally, a terrifying thought struck him. Could it be dripping from the third floor ceiling? I want to check out the third floor. Ling Qiushi said, "You should go to the first floor for dinner first." Going alone, Ruan Beiji said, "Let's go together. Aren't you scared?" Ling Qiushi asked suspiciously. Ruan Beiji had just been crying her eyes out. "Aren't you here?" Ruan Beiji brushed her hair by her ear and smiled gently. "With you here, what should first be afraid of?" Ling Qiushi thought. That's right. After all, you ran faster than I did last night. So the two of them followed the corridor back to the third floor. The floor was still covered in blood, and the remains of the uncollected body remained. However, this time, Ling Qiushi's attention was drawn to the ceiling. He looked up and, as expected, saw traces of blood on the ceiling. The traces were quite unsettling, as if something had clung to the ceiling and was slowly crawling across. Perhaps due to the passage of time, the blood on the ceiling had also frozen, but a faint trace of blood dripping onto the floor was still visible. Ling Qiushi's scalp tingled. He really didn't want to think about what had been hanging from the ceiling when he first appeared on the third floor, and they hadn't even noticed it the whole time. Ruan Beiji looked up at the ceiling for a long time. Ling Qiushi asked her what she saw. The ceiling. Ruan Beiji said. What else could you see? The starry sky and dreams. She was truly courageous. After looking at the ceiling, she even went to look at the two bloody corpses. She didn't show any discomfort the whole time, and even seemed a little excited.